This is getting fun now because over the last few years with the Texans, and you look back and you're like, oh, man, it was a year ago today that this happened or that happened. And for a while, it was not looking back at fun stuff. But now we are officially into the era now that looking back at anniversaries of things is going to be a whole lot of fun, I think, moving forward. Because today is DeMeco-versary. Today is the one-year anniversary of the day that the Texans hired DeMeco Ryans. And I said going into the break, I have one voicemail message saved on my phone, Seth, just one. I'm not somebody who keeps a lot of things. I delete my texts, I delete my voicemails, mostly for plausible deniability than anything else. But this one I kept because I felt like we would look back at this one and go, yeah, that was a pretty cool day. And I was, at the time, I was actually on Landry's YouTube stream with him, doing a live stream, talking about the Texans coaching situation. I don't think anything had been resolved, but there had been rumors floating around about DeMeco Ryans and whatnot getting hired. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of like chopping it up and speculating and things like that. And as I was on the YouTube stream with Landry, my phone was ringing across the room. I had to let it go to voicemail. And I got done with Landry. It's in the middle of the day on January 31st. And I go over to my phone. After I get done with Landry, I go to my voicemail. And this was the message that I listened to.
Hey, Sean, this is Cal calling to let you know we have concluded our head coach search and agreed to terms and signed a contract with DeMeco Ryans. He's a bright young coach, and it's going to bring some excitement to our fan base, and I hope you enjoy the ride because it's going to be fun. All right, thanks. Wanted you to know. Thanks, bye.
I thought that was pretty cool. It's kind of fun to go back and listen to a year later. It was right. It's been fun. It's been a hell of a ride. It's been a hell of a ride.
How many people do you think he called?
That's a good question. I know it wasn't just me. I'm guessing Mark Berman was probably on his call list.
Yeah.
Guessing John McClain was probably on his call list.
Did you? Did he say? Did you? Were you allowed to release that information?
I did.
I
checked. Well, yeah. No. Like back then.
Yeah.
No, at that point, by the time I listened to it, Berman had already been out there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not calling me ahead of Berman back then. Yeah, I think it was just a. I think it was I'm on the courtesy call list. So. And I did double check with him to make sure I could play that on the air today out of courtesy too.
It is funny, sometimes those guys, when people want to act like, oh, Schefter beat whoever to this, or the other guy beat Schefter, they're both getting the information like at the same time, and one got his thumbs working faster than the other. So, that was. Were you surprised at that point? I couldn't remember the exact timeline of when we felt like it was going to happen.
Surprised that DeMeco was the hire?
Yeah.
No, I think it was all pointing in that direction. I think that's why Landry and I were doing a YouTube stream at the time, because it was looking like the news that we had gotten was that they're deep into their talks.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember now. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because they were. Yeah, there was a feeling that something was imminent. Yeah,
right.
There was going to be an announcement at some point. We just didn't know when. Okay.
Yeah. So I think, and as you heard in that voicemail, he said we've signed a contract. So I think they were waiting till I was on the if there's a set of tiers of people that Cal was reaching out to, I was on the call after the ink has dried list.
They were so basically they were probably trying to sell him on rust proofing or something.
Exactly.
And he's like, I don't know, man.
Exactly.
He said, DeMeco's calling his wife like, they just had me in here for so long. I'm so hungry. That's what always gets me.
Yeah.
I'm just so hungry. And that's probably why when DeMeco caved.
That's right. Why is there no food? But it is fun to go back and think about that a year ago and just think about how different the vibe around that coaching search, the arrival at this coach, and the press conference, man. The press conference that happened a day or two after that voicemail message where all the guys from DeMeco's era of Texans football, it seemed like, were there at the press conference.
On January 18th, 2023, just to put things to frame things up a little bit, this is January 18th, I think, of 2023.
Okay.
The odds for who would be the next Texans head coach.
Oh, I love this. Okay.
Leader in the clubhouse, Jonathan Gannon. Sexy. Shane Steichen.
Okay.
A.K.A. Nick Foles, prove me otherwise. DeMeco Ryans was third favorite.
Okay.
But he was like, Shane Steichen was plus 350. DeMeco was up at plus 650.
Okay.
And then Sean Payton at plus 800. My God, Josh McCown was still on the board. Josh McCown was the fifth favorite as of mid-January 2023.
Wow. That's wild. Give me a couple more names.
Raheem Morris was up there. Okay, I'll go down the line. After Sean Payton and Josh McCown, it was Eric Bieniemy.
Okay.
Leslie Frazier.
Okay.
Dan Quinn.
Right.
A Shane Waldron.
Okay. Who's still an OC right now, by the way. Yep.
Raheem Morris, current head coach of the Atlanta Falcons.
Yep.
Ejiro Evero.
Okay.
Former defensive coordinator of the Broncos, current defensive coordinator of the Panthers, and has interviewed for a couple of jobs.
He interviewed for jobs last year. He interviewed for jobs this year, and he's
interviewed for the Texans last year.
Yeah.
Byron Leftwich was up there.
Okay.
Thomas Brown, deposed offensive coordinator Thomas Brown from the Panthers.
Yeah.
And then Brian Callahan. Okay. Brian Callahan was on there. He's
new
a
Titans
head coach now, too.
New Titans coach. Boy, Byron Leftwich. Not to go too far off the grid on this thing. That's a cautionary tale right there. Remember, he reportedly had the Jags job back when they hired Doug Peterson, but Leftwich reportedly didn't want to work with Trent Baalke.
He turned it down. Yeah. That's boy. You talk about all these guys turning jobs down right now, and just how it's not always so simple that next job comes around. Man. Now, when your current employer gives you a nice big pay boost, that offsets things a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
It changes the
but no pay boost.
On the scale.
Nobody's paying an offensive coordinator $50 million over 5 years or whatever. That's a big step up in money to being in the big seat as a head coach.
That's your commitment to your commitment to your ideals as what you want out of your coaching profession.
Yeah. They're
really tested there. If you're, $50 million. Think about what you would do for $50 million, and now just think of how vile so many of those things are, and where they rank below taking a non-ideal head coaching job in the NFL.
Yeah. The $50 million. There are a lot of things I couldn't say on the air. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Well, but it's tricky though too, because there's things you could do for $50 million, and you're like, okay, well, is this going to be tied to me forever, like my coaching record? Yeah. Is it going to be on the internet forever, like my coaching record?
Will this be part of my digial fingerprint? Yes.
Is it going to affect future choices?
That's right.
Do I have to live with it for 4 years? There's different variables here.
I want to go back. I got to go back and see what I wrote about the DeMeco Ryans hire in the Houston Press, or go back and I don't know if there's a way to go back, how far back our podcasts go or whatever, and listen to whatever our expectations were the day he got hired. Because I've got to believe, Seth, that whatever our expectations were for DeMeco as a head coach, a talent developer, a talent evaluator, a culture changer, sheer success on the field in terms of number of wins and where they went this year, I can't imagine there's a category with DeMeco Ryans where he has not exceeded whatever it was you and I were talking about on February 1st, the day after he was hired.
And I think that the biggest victory for me, honestly, is that I am very skeptical of culture talk. Not because I don't believe in culture, but it's that almost everybody talks about it and very few are actually good at establishing it. And a lot of establishing it is just the culture needs to be consistent with the head coach's personality. And sometimes, coaches will read a book over the summer and they'll have noble intentions, but they can't fake something that they are not. And that's where a lot of the best laid plans, fall by the wayside, because you can't establish a culture that's not you. I was reading this article that I currently can't get to because now it's behind a paywall in the San Francisco Chronicle. Mm-hmm. But it was about Steve Kerr before he took his job in gold with the Warriors.
Yeah.
He went up and he spent a few days with Pete Carroll in Seattle. Mm-hmm. And Pete Carroll just basically did a workshop with him. I was getting angry at Pete Carroll as I was reading this, because it really looked like, man, he gave Steve Kerr the keys to do exactly what they've done with the Warriors. And a lot of what Steve Kerr talked about was he just really wanted the joy of the game to just be ever present, for the guys to just really love being there and playing the game. And Carroll tested him on, okay, well, what's your plan for that? And how are you going to stress that? And you can't just think that it's going to happen just because that's the way you feel. And Kerr left there with a much more structured plan for how he was going to establish that culture.
Yeah.
I don't know how structured DeMeco's plan is for establishing culture or anything. And I don't know how structured it has to be, because Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I just know that I think the culture has changed, and a lot of it is just simply because DeMeco's personality itself is the culture.
He is the culture.
Yeah,
he is culture. Yes, he's walking culture. Absolutely.
So, like, however he comes by it, just like it is with Steve Kerr and the Warriors, you take look. Yes, they're talented as hell, but they're also talented with a bunch of guys who weren't top 3 draft picks and whatnot. The culture matters at Golden State. And like, it feels good that I feel like, okay, this is a genuine thing. These aren't some posters that people put up that they bought off the internet, and that's the culture. Like, this is DeMeco Ryans' culture.
Yeah, man, he's authentic, no question. I actually just now Googled Sean Pendergast, Houston Press, Texans hired DeMeco Ryans to see what came up. The first article that comes up this is from 4 days before they hired DeMeco, Seth. I did those Twitter approval polls for 7 of the top candidates for the Texans for the head coaching job, and I put them into an article here. And some of the names you just brought up on that odds board are on here. It's fun to go back and look at this stuff a year later, especially now that DeMeco's the head coach. And I put them into buckets. The approved everybody wanted DeMeco, obviously. DeMeco had a 98% approval rating, and I usually get a couple thousand people on my Twitter timeline voting on these things. The no thank you list, Ejiro Evero, 15.3% approval rating. He was the Denver DC at the time. Yeah. Thomas Brown, and these are all people the Texans had requested interviews with. LA Rams assistant head coach, 16.3% approval rating. Mike Kafka.
By the way, yeah.
Remember when Mike Kafka was the darling of John Lopez? Remember that was John Lopez said Kafka's going to be the guy. If I'm not mistaken.
Why was he so into Kafka?
I think he's probably like me, Seth. There were Nugget Hussies out there probably pushing Kafka.
Wasn't Kafka some famous communist from back in the
day? He wrote some sort of manifesto. I'm not sure.
There you go. There's your connection. Lopez. Mike
Kafka, New York Giants OC, 24.6% approval rating. So I think safe to say we're all glad. Kafka, 24.6% approval rating.
Okay.
Then I had the approved consolation prize list. Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, both pretty good approval ratings. If the Texans had hired Jonathan Gannon in the last cycle, 63.9% of the folks who voted in my poll would have approved of that. Shane Steichen, 69.4% approval rating for Shane Steichen. And I'll say this, I think both those guys had good seasons coaching this year where they were in Indianapolis and Arizona.
I think they had good seasons. This is where with Gannon, what I would worry about is, where my standard has been. I'm okay with having an offensive bias and hiring a head coach, but what trumps everything is that if you've got a guy who genuinely has that it factor or whatever that, and again, we're getting into kind of like the culture talk. It's really hard to define, but you know it when you see it. If it's a Mike Tomlin type, for instance, then okay, that trumps everything else. With Gannon, I feel no it factor whatsoever. So I'm going to lose. He's going to lose out to Steichen because I don't feel an it factor with Steichen either. But I think he's a hell of an offensive coach.
Yeah.
So I would have gone with Steichen 100%, and I think that's borne out at least so far with what he did with. I mean, Gardner Minshew's in the Pro Bowl as an alternate right now.
Yeah.
Because Shane Steichen got so much out of him.
And Jalen Hurts took a big step backwards this year.
Yeah.
That's the other
And
thing.
Justin Herbert really hasn't necessarily fulfilled on the promise that he had when Steichen was with him his rookie year.
That's exactly right. The only other non-Miko candidate I've got in this article, the polarizing legend, Sean Payton. 57.4% approval rating for Sean Payton a year and 4 days ago today if he had been hired by the Houston Texans. Man, I hear the stories out of Denver, and I am so glad they didn't hire Sean Payton. I'm talking purely from a media coverage standpoint. You talk to people in Denver. I've got friends in the Denver media, and I tell them what training camp was like with DeMeco, and it's like it's like you're talking to people who are in prison or something like that. Like you get to sit at the 50-yard line and do your shows from there. What?
I guess but does that filter over? The sense I got from my brother this year was that at least my brother. My brother
who lives in Denver.
My brother. Yeah, sorry. No, my brother from Topeka.
He has big.
Doesn't even like the NFL.
He's got big Payton takes.
Yeah. So he hated. I shouldn't say he hated. Not a fan of Russell Wilson
Yeah.
at all. And I think that kind of superseded everything to the point where I wonder if a lot of Denver fans, like my brother at least, I think was going to cut every break he could for Sean Payton because he figured Sean Payton he took the job because he wanted the Denver job, but he had to try to make it work for Russell Wilson, and that wasn't going to work. The biggest thing, imagine though, Sean, that was the approval rating then. Let's remember that Sean Payton was traded to Denver for a 2024 third-round draft pick. Oh, no, but they sent the 2024 in exchange for the Broncos' first-round pick in 2023 and a second-round pick this year.
Yeah.
So you would have given up a first-rounder and a second-rounder this year for a third-rounder from the Saints.
And Sean Payton, yeah. That's glad we didn't do it.
No compensation required for DeMeco.
Nope, just whatever Cal's paying him, 6-year deal and whatever he's paying him, and it's worth every damn penny. DeMeco Ryans' approval rating, real quick. A year and 4 days ago today by Texan fans, 97.6%. Here's what I wrote. Not much to say here. DeMeco Ryans would be a massive home run and would single-handedly make the last 2 seasons of suffering almost worth it if it begat getting him as the team's next head coach. Let's make this happen, Nick and Cal.
Okay, so if it comes to DeMeco Ryans' approval rating right now, if you were to do if you're going to get people down and have them put on record, it would be 100% unanimous. I think if we got everybody in a room, which is like honestly during the pregame show or whatever, in our events we get to talk to people face to face without a digital record of it. I think people are going to they were going to approve DeMeco this year no matter what. I think the thing that really put it over the top, maybe this is more me than anybody else, was just how clean everything was from a game management perspective.
Yeah. Yes.
There were 2 big issues that people had. One was deciding to kick that field goal. I don't know if that was a big issue or not. Kicking the field goal at the end of the Jaguars game, that was a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't moment.
Yeah.
It was such a long 4th and 8. It wasn't a slam dunk decision. I'll say 3. There was the pass. There was the pass to convert that was intercepted in the Bengals game.
Yep.
And then there was, which blame Slowick, blame DeMeco, whatever you want. And then really the biggest one for me was not challenging the Devin Singletary spot
in the playoff
in the final playoff game.
Yeah, I think that and that went and the announce team on the game ignored that. Like it was.
You know why?
Yeah.
You know why? And this is where I wonder about the game management side of it. Remember, the Texans rushed up to the line.
Yeah.
The Texans rushed up to the line almost like it was the Ravens that were going to challenge it or something.
Right. It was weird.
So I think my guess is that they had 2 plays called.
Yeah.
They were trying to go boom, boom and hit them in quick succession.
Yeah.
And because of that, they didn't really stop and reflect on how bad a spot that was.
Yeah. It was a bad spot, no doubt.
And then they ran a really bad play.
Yeah, they got stuffed. Absolutely.